Welcome to the Year of the Movie podcast, the podcast where we talk about movies from the year of the movie 2023. We're your hosts, and we started this podcast because 2023 was kind of a goofy, wild year for movies. You had movies like 80 for Brady, 65, Strays, Oppenheimer, Barbie, and then there were strikes. It's wild. It's crazy.
Had a lot going on.
If you like this podcast, go ahead and consider supporting us on Patreon, reviewing and rating wherever you listen to your podcasts, following on Instagram, subscribing on YouTube, all of the stuff that just will help us help you make more good content.
Isn't that helpful for you?
What are we talking about today?
We're talking about the 2023 movie.
A movie from 2023?
Yeah.
On a podcast where we talk about movies from 2023?
I thought we'd mix it up a little bit.
Wow.
Yeah. Dumb Money.
Dumb money.
Yeah.
Dumb money.
Dumb Money. The synopsis is a regular guy sinks his life savings into the stock of video game store GameStop and starts posting about it. When his social posts start blowing up and a stock tip becomes a movement, everyone gets rich until the billionaires fight back. What were your first impressions when you heard about this movie? And how much do you remember about the actual events the movie is based on?
Oh, I remember a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And my reaction was surprised that they're already making one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
It felt like a real quick turnaround.
Oh, I've got some detailed information about the production timeline of this movie.
Because all of the strikes.
Yeah.
And obviously they had to film it before the strikes for it to have happened.
Mm.
But I was just like, man, I feel like this stuff just happened. How did they already write a movie about it?
Yeah.
What about you?
I think I heard about it when the stock blew up, and then it was just like, nice, interesting.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know at what point I heard that the movie was being made or that it was coming out, if it was just when the trailer came out or something, but I was like, yeah, that makes sense that they'd make a movie out of that. I didn't realize how quick it was.
Yeah.
It felt recent. And yeah, I thought the trailer looked pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I was,
Impressive cast.
yeah, impressive cast. And then I was curious how, like, people would receive the movie. Like,
Yeah.
if they, because it felt like it was an event that mattered a lot to people in a very specific bubble until it went super mainstream. And how people, like, who were in it and then also around the periphery of it would react to it.
Yeah.
The reception has been interesting. So, yeah. Should we talk about the trailer?
Okay.
So, it is a pretty straightforward trailer. It does a similar framing device that the movie itself does, where the trailer starts with showing the events of, like, the stock blows up, and then it goes back 6 months earlier. It's all pretty fast-paced. It's upbeat music. There's a lot of swearing. It's a really big cast. They show a lot of people. And then it includes text that says, when the game was rigged, they changed the rules. So, yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. The cast.
The cast. Paul Dano as Keith Gill.
Mm-hmm.
Shailene Woodley as Caroline Gill. Pete Davidson as Kevin Gill. Vincent D'Onofrio as Steve Cohen. America Ferrera as Ginny. Seth Rogen as Gabe Plotkin. Olivia Thirlby as Yara Plotkin. Nick Offerman as Ken Griffin. Anthony Ramos as Marcos Garcia. Sebastian Stan as Vlad Tenev. Rushi Kota as Baiju Bhatt. Talia Ryder as Harmony Williams. Myhala. It's just
Myhala.
Myhala, okay, as Riri.
Mm-hmm.
Kate Burton as Elaine Gill. Clancy Brown as Steve Gill.
Yeah. A lot of people.
A lot of people.
Yeah. So main character Paul Dano as Keith. He's the one who goes by Roaring Kitty online, and then is basically the leader of this GameStop movement. Shailene Woodley plays his wife. Pete Davidson is his brother. Vincent D'Onofrio is a guy, just like in real life. He's a wealthy guy, and he's not in many scenes, but he's just included in the
he's
the 1%.
Steve Cohen, owner of the Mets.
Yeah.
And
America.
a lot of other stuff.
Yeah. America Ferrera is a nurse. Gabe Plotkin, Seth Rogen is another 1%er. Olivia Thirlby is his wife. Nick Offerman, 1%er. And then Sebastian Stan and Rushi Kota play the Robin Hood founders.
Yep.
Yeah. Everyone else is kind of like... And then Elaine Gill and Steve Gill are Keith's parents. So everyone else is kind of like the various people who got invested in GameStop and showing their stories. So this is in the genre of economic thriller, I guess. So
Comedy-esque.
yeah. But like a lot of the tension rides on the money stuff and like the complications there. I don't feel confident explaining the money things. So I took the plot summary from Wikipedia, kind of breaks it down in a pretty straightforward way, and then I figure we can go through and talk about specific scenes that the movie shows within that. So, Keith Gill is a middle-class man working as a financial analyst in Brockton, Massachusetts. During his spare time, he regularly frequents the stock market subreddit r/Wall Street Bets, posting his opinions via YouTube live streams under the name Roaring Kitty. He struggles to provide for his family, and his brother Kevin constantly mocks his YouTube work as nerdy garbage. Towards the beginning of his introduction, if we're going in chronological order of the movie, then he is a financial analyst. He does stocks on as a hobby, and then he meets up with his friend to catch up, who his friend seems to be a more secure financial analyst, or
seems to actually work in money.
Yeah. He's more of a Wall Street guy. And then he showed his friend, he was like, yeah, I'm investing in GameStop. And the friend was kind of making fun of him. And then he was like, no, I have $53,000 invested in GameStop.
Yeah.
And that's the beginning of showing he notices that the company's being undervalued. And then in July 2020, at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, Keith notices the video game retailer GameStop stock is falling. He sinks his life savings into buying stock in it, regularly live streaming updates with his viewers. Despite Kevin and several peers claiming this is a waste of time, by January 2021, activity on Wall Street Bets reveals that several hedge fund investment firms, including Melvin Capital Management and its founder Gabe Plotkin, have been short-selling stock in the chain on the assumption it would close, causing a mass increase in GameStop's overall stock price when online stock buyers, including struggling nurse Jenny, GameStop retail employee Marcos, and lesbian University of Texas and Austin couple Riri and Harmony start aggressively buying stock, causing Plotkin and other investment CEOs to lose hundreds of millions within the same time frame. Keith is heralded as a financial guru. Things take a turn when Wall Street Bets is temporarily shut down for inflammatory and vulgar content, causing a mass surge of panic selling in GameStop stock in an attempt to beat a perceived price drop. When the commission-free stock trading website Robinhood is unable to pay the money for the sales adequately, co-chairman Vlad Tenev, at the behest of Citadel LLC owner Ken Griffin, halts all purchasing in GameStop stock until Robinhood shores up adequate capital to cover outstanding NSCC requirements created due to the level of purchase. They raise the $3 billion necessary, but the subsequent negative backlash results in an investigation by the United States House Committee on Financial Services, with Tenev, Griffin, Plotkin, and Keith all being subpoenaed, the former three for their roles in the fiasco and the later on suspicion of using the situation to trick the public into making himself rich. As the investors struggle to defend their actions, Keith adamantly denies any wrongdoing, saying he was only doing what anyone with a passing awareness of investment banking would do in that situation. In the aftermath, Post-text shows how several of the individuals were affected. Plotkin was forced to shut down Melvin Capital because of the net losses the incident caused. Robinhood was the target of several lawsuits following the fiasco and wound up starting in the stock market significantly lower than it was prior. Harmony was able to use the money she obtained to pay off her family's debt issues and continues her relationship with Riri. Marcos sold half of his GameStop stock and quit his position in the company. Jennifer remains in debt but has retained her shareholding. Keith retired from YouTube in late April to get out of the public eye and sold part of his stocks to get Kevin an expensive car as a way to stop him nagging about how he will not loan him his car for his food deliveries. So that's the end of the summary online. Any specific things we want to add?
I didn't think Marcos quit GameStop. I thought he was just like, I'm going to keep working here and do what I want.
Yeah, that's true. Because, like, there's a lot of stuff. His manager...
Who was played by the Green Goblin from The Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Yeah, his manager is, like, another side character. And he keeps saying, like, hey, man, I noticed, or like, I really appreciated how you interacted with that customer, but we got to make sure that we go through the 5 blah, blah, blah stages. Like, he's enforcing all of the corporate hoops that you have to jump through in order to talk to a customer. And Marcos is just like, no, I'm not going to do that. He's like, okay, well, then you're fired. And he's like, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
And...
because he's like, I like it here. I like hanging out here.
Yeah.
I like working with the people, but I'm going to do it my way. The manager was like, what?
I'm going to fire you. And he's like, you need the approval of like 7 people in order to do that. Yeah. So he just leaves. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a small thing, but he didn't really quit his job.
Yeah.
Yeah, the family dynamic of the Gills was good. I wish that there was more. Shailene Woodley was there.
She, I know we've talked about in our robots episode that she was in, that, like, we're not, like, huge Shailene stans. And, yeah, I don't know, like, it's not really on her. It's more just, like, the content of how much Caroline was in the movie.
Yeah, no, the wife character, I should say, was there.
Yeah.
And Shailene Woodley played.
They had, like, a moment of tension when everything was blowing up. Keith gets subpoenaed for the congressional hearing, and then there's reporters outside of their house and everything. And they have a moment of tension where Keith is like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And she's like, okay, well, figure it out, or else I'm going to go to my mom's and take the kid with me and stuff. But otherwise, for the rest of the movie, like, she's very supportive. Like, I would say she's semi-active. Like, she has an understanding of what he's doing, and she's not, like, handing the reins over to him for their financial future. She's like, no, this makes sense, and I trust you.
Yeah.
So... because he asked her, like, it's towards the beginning of the movie, then he asked her, like, am I making a huge mistake, after he meets up with his friend, and she's like, no, if you see it, then you're good. So, yeah.
But, like, the Gill family lost someone during COVID. Keith's sister.
Yeah, Keith and Kevin's sister, Sarah.
And, like, it's not something where I would say, like, they brush over it. They definitely acknowledge it a good amount. It was just, like, interesting seeing how this is affecting his family. Like, the death and then the stock thing, and, like, how all of it was kind of happening around the same time.
Yeah.
I would have just liked a little bit more.
If they were going to mention it, then, it didn't really have a button, or so, I don't know. Like, because Keith meets up with his friend. Caroline asked him, did you talk about Sarah? So they don't explain who Sarah is at that point. And then later with conversations with Kevin, then they say, like, Sarah is their sister. She died, it's implied, due to complications with COVID. And then the family visit her grave together. And it's like towards the beginning of the stock blowing up where like Keith is getting some traction, but like the tipping point hasn't happened yet. And then he also has a guy in his YouTube comments that always like makes fun of him and stuff. And then he looks over at Kevin's phone and he sees that it's Kevin's profile and he's like, "Your balls? You're the one who's been making fun of me." And then they fight in the backseat of the car and stuff. They talk about her, I guess, towards the end, right before the congressional hearings again, when Keith is just like, "Man, we never used to fight this much." And then they just go, "Sarah." Like,
Keith also says it on a stream that like he also has experienced loss throughout COVID and everything.
It's another way of showing that like he is one of them, like he's one of the investors and everything, where he's like, "This has been a tough year for all of us." And then he tells them that he lost his sister. And it's like it's a pretty genuine moment for like, I wouldn't say that he's an influencer in the way of like marketing his grief or anything. He's just like, it felt right to share with you all because we're in this together.
And then he just like stops the stream, so it's like he doesn't like sit on it or anything. He's just like, "I just thought I'd let you know I'm right there with you. This is what I've gone through.
Right.
See you next time."
They show when they introduce everyone, then they have a little text that comes up with their name, and then it also shows their net worth. So that was an interesting way to show, like, you know, normally like show don't tell, but it was a pretty clear-cut way to be like,
look how much money people
look
made.
how much money people have. And then, you know, like these college students are in debt for hundreds of thousands of dollars and stuff, and just like their different numbers and like people's financial standing and stuff.
Ginny, the nurse, started way negative. It still ended negative at the end of the movie, but it was like 5,000 negative rather than hundreds of thousands negative.
It was like 50,000 negative, and then went to maybe 10 or something. So it's like, could be better, but you know.
I mean, how much money can you invest if you're in debt?
Right. She invested some, and then they keep going back to her as like her doubling down because she's keeping a really close eye on everything. And she, like, when it was at peak sales, then she could have sold for $500,000. And then she doesn't, because she's like, "I believe in this movement. Everyone keeps saying, like, diamond hands hold the line. I'm part of that." And then she goes on a trip. It's like the one time that she like treats herself to get away, basically. And her coworker is like, "Oh, are you gonna sell stocks to pay for it?" And she's like, "No, I'm putting it all on the card." And then while she's in Florida, then she sees that like that was when all of the confusion was happening of the Wall Street bets was offline, and then people were selling and everything. And then eventually the stock dies down, and she's like, she's on the plane back, and she's like, "I could have sold, I could have cashed out, and now my kid is never gonna get braces and stuff." It's like a little played for laughs. But
and also like, did she sell when it went down, or she held on after?
She held on.
I thought it went back up.
It probably did go back up. Like the implication with the post-credit stuff was that like she's a lifer. Like she's not selling. She's just in the movement now. I don't know if I didn't see with follow-ups or anything if the real people that these characters are based off of, if there are real people, then like if the IRL Jenny has sold, or if there is a number where she would sell or something.
All the actors were very good.
Yes.
There wasn't like a performance in this that I was like even Pete Davidson. I was like, "Oh wow, he's given a good performance." Like,
it was good casting for Pete Davidson.
I mean, he plays like the dumb kind of idiot. Doesn't have like a plan with his life brother.
He lives with their parents still. He's doing DoorDash
He's
stuff.
the stoner character.
Yeah.
But
He got laid off during the pandemic, so they're just kind of like,
yeah.
he's around. He doesn't really know what to do.
They went, when they went to visit Sarah's grave, they were all sad, obviously.
Yeah.
But like the way that they had the frame was like the mom was like at the grave, Keith and Dad were to the right, standing together, and then Pete Davidson, Kevin, was like to the left, kind of by himself. And it was like, oh, that's a good way of being like he's kind of doing his thing. But then they show like him reacting, and he is like,
he's the only one that's full on crying.
Yeah.
It was good.
I like that they showed all of like the different people and like the groups of people being like, oh yeah, I'm a part of this. I kind of feel like it was one too many. I don't know. It just, because they also tried to give each of those little stories backgrounds to their characters and like context as to why this is important to them. I do like that. It just felt like it took away, like Jenny had like a friend.
Jenny had a lot of screen time.
And like a friend from work.
Yeah.
Who was like the voice of like, you gotta sell, you can't just hold on to stock. Like that's scary and dangerous. And it was just like, that's a lot for not the main focus. And I felt like it took away from potential of giving the Gill family a little bit more.
That's fair. I do think it works still because the stories like it provided context for like what was going on like in the moment, and they're having the different conversations about like the stocks and everything, but then also Jenny and her coworker are in like a group training thing. He's telling her to sell, she won't do it, and then you can hear like the people leading the thing saying like, do we have any volunteers? And then Jenny's like, I'll do it. And then they just say like, all right, here's the first COVID vaccine at this hospital, and it's just the world event context while all of this is going on, I think was a pretty effective way to do that. Everyone is wearing masks in this movie. Like, it's very realistic for...
Yeah, I thought it was done pretty well, too. Like, I feel like some of the movies... Because there's that one Anne Hathaway...
Oh, the heist movie?
The heist one that, like, they filmed during the pandemic. Takes place during the pandemic. That even, like, parts of that, I was like, some of this is true, but, like, the mask-wearing aspect is not how this is actually happening. But this one felt right to me, where it was like Marcos had the mask on but below his nose, and then the manager was like, mask up.
It became a character trait of like, there were a lot of people that like they were reminded of masks and stuff. It was pretty effective and pretty grounded.
There is a really good moment early on when Keith is on a train, like going from work or to work or something, and he is alone on the train car with his like Dunkin' coffee, and then like the train is coming to a stop, and like a bunch of people are about to board on, so like he looks out the window and like quickly takes a drink, because he's like, well, I'm not going to take my mask down now that people are coming on. I was like, oh, that was true. That feels true to real life. And it was never like, we weren't making fun of the masks in this movie. It was just like, no, this is the reality that we were in. And
it was an interesting layer of showing like how those characters would act in the pandemic. And like Jenny, there were a couple of scenes where she's at work and she's double masked and stuff. And
she's a nurse.
Because she's a nurse, you never see the one percenters out in public spaces. They are always in their mansions and stuff, and then there's dialogue of they are like just ignoring the government guidelines telling them to halt their business and stuff, they move. I think it's Nick Offerman's character flew his entire company
To a resort.
and rented it out so that they could keep working and be
Yeah.
bubbled together. And then Seth Rogen's character is he took his family to their house, or like their vacation home, basically.
Yep.
And then he's trying to get his neighbor's house knocked down so that he can build his own tennis court so that they can play there,
Yeah.
and not because he's borrowing Nick Offerman's court or something. And it's like, that's his issue that he has to deal with.
He also, Seth Rogen's character has like an in-house cooking
Yeah, there's a lot
team,
of
maids, whatever, and like they're all wearing masks, and he's just walking throughout his house without one. And it's just like, this movie does a really good job of like clearly positioning like the rich are not living in the same world.
Yeah.
Which, like, isn't something we don't know, but it does it in a way that I'm like, yeah, this isn't over the top pointing it out. This is just like, this is how they live. There's a great scene. Sorry.
You're good.
If you want to go, then.
Well, I was going to say, I was wrong earlier. There is one thing where Sebastian Stan's character is in public. He's at a billionaire house party.
Yeah.
And no one is wearing masks. And then he has to, like, go into a pantry to get the call from his financial guy telling him they need $3 billion and stuff. And yeah, but yeah, that's another, like, he just completely ignores any of the social distancing or anything.
It's also true about the college kids when they're in the dorm. None of the kids in the dorm.
They also have parties.
Like, they're having parties. They're not masking up.
They wear masks in class.
But they show them wearing it in class, and we're just like that. Yeah, that's what happened.
I knew people like that.
I was gonna say there's a good scene that is in one of the trailers, but it's when like the money is going up, and Shailene Woodley is asking,
"Oh yeah,
how much money did we make today?" And he's like, $1 million. What about yesterday? 5 million. And then she's like, "We're like really rich," which yes,
yeah.
But then it cuts to Seth Rogen and his wife is saying, "How much money did we lose today?" And he's like, $1 billion.
Yeah.
What about yesterday? $1 billion.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, but you're still.
Their numbers are so wild.
Like, you lost $2 billion. You still have way more money than what they just made. Yeah, and so it's just like.
Yeah, like the reactions, like seeing the numbers of everyone's net worth when introducing the characters helped a lot, because they like, I think for the most part you see the number that everyone has invested into GameStop, and like the way that they treat things is like the threshold of like, this is a life-changing amount of money for people is wildly different than the 1% people, where like the life-changing amount of money for Gabe Plotkin is a couple $1 billion to bail his company out when everything goes wrong. And then for Marcos, who works at GameStop, the life-changing amount was like $150,000.
Yeah.
And like, that's a lot of money, but like not to certain people. Yeah. Keith, I think, was in the 30 million range or something.
Yeah. But when they got to $1 million, they're like, do we just pull out?
It was 11 million.
Oh, it was 11.
11. And then Kevin was like yelling at him over the phone. He was like, "What are you doing? You are the richest man in Brockton, Massachusetts. Like, sell out now." And he was still like, "I don't want to do it." And then Shailene Woodley is like, "I think we hold." And then you can see like Keith's relief of like, it's really tempting to sell out and like, you know, just get rich and leave. And she's like, "I think we can hold out." And you can be like, "Okay, good." Yeah.
Something that I didn't like was that our lesbian couple clearly had a queer roommate.
Yeah, and they weren't friends.
And they were not friends even in the slightest.
It was very funny. Like, they are probably the annoying couple, like college couple, where if you are unfortunately the roommate of one of the two, then you are living with two other people, not one other person, and in your tiny dorm room. So like, I get the frustration and everything.
For sure.
It was very funny to just have like this other pretty clearly queer person come in and just like huff at them and then leave. Or it's like, why aren't you guys hanging out?
Set some ground rules.
Yeah. Don't be the worst. Yeah. That was funny. I was gonna say, if there is anything to like trim in the movie, then I think maybe some of those interactions where it added to the comedy, but it didn't necessarily add to the world building in the way that Jenny's storyline does, where you have the pandemic elements in it. Yeah.
The college couple were my least favorite.
Yeah.
I would cut them just because like it had a lot of this isn't important stuff. They were also just annoying.
They were annoying, but again, I remember people like that. Like, it's not unrealistic.
No.
The one moment is Harmony. So like, Riri is the one who was into the stock at first, and then Harmony is the one who like gets really into it and investing a lot of money into it. Harmony says, or like, because they talk about the title of the movie comes from retail investors, and it's people who like they will invest in GameStop, Best Buy, stuff like that. Those companies are easy to short and suck the money out of if you're like really rich already. So they refer to people who invest in that as dumb money.
Yeah.
That's where all of that comes from. Harmony talks about how her dad was like a bagger at a grocery store. He worked his way up to be like the manager of this chain and everything. And then the company that he worked for got shorted in the same way that GameStop is getting shorted. And he lost everything. His pension became worthless. Like, completely ruined his life, basically. And then she said he worked until the day he died. So, like, you get that context of, like, why a college student needs this money besides the debt. Then, like, she has that personal investment in it. But I agree. Their storyline could have been a little bit stronger if they were going to include more.
Yeah.
There were a couple things that referred to Gabe as the main antagonist of the movie, and I'll find that hard to agree with, because
he's not an antagonist.
He's very goofy. Like,
it's Seth Rogen, so like,
so he has like inherited money.
Yeah.
And he's doing financial things. I think his net worth is like 400 million or something. Which, like, not Nick Offerman character numbers, which is in like the 12 billion range or something. But he's like, he's just weirdly insecure the whole time, so it's hard to think of him as an antagonist, where he's just going through the motions of this is what you do if you're in this position.
Nick Offerman's character is the most antagonist.
Yeah.
Because he's against Seth Rogen and Paul Dano.
Yeah.
Like, he's just in it for himself. He's clearly the most evil. In real life, he's clearly the most evil.
Everyone calls him a jerk. Like,
he tried to stop this movie from happening. He sued Nick Offerman. I don't know if you've gotten into that.
I did not know
Or he
that.
tried to sue Nick Offerman, I think. I think he was he sent Nick Offerman like letters being like, you can't play me. This can't happen.
Excellent.
I will come after you.
Wow.
And then Sony was like, he has no grounds.
Yeah.
We will protect you.
Yeah.
And then Nick Offerman was basically like, well, I guess I won't be getting a Christmas card from him this year. But yeah, like, this guy is clearly evil.
Yeah.
I think the that all happened, and then like part of Sony's like a statement was like clearly he doesn't know about the Streisand effect.
Yeah.
And it was just like, yeah, you're doing all this stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and then he's like, you can't portray me that way, admitting his guilt.
Right.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah. The credits of the movie had footage from the actual congressional hearings,
yeah.
and seeing the comparison of like how the movie did it with how it was from the actual recordings was pretty spot on. There's a part in Nick Offerman's testimony where they ask him, like, just out of curiosity, how many people are in the room with you? And then 3 people stand up and leave the room. And he's like, there are 5 people in the room with me.
Including myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he's like always looking at his advisors that are standing
Directly behind the camera.
Yeah. So then when they show the footage, they show the same thing of the guy looking like way up higher than where the camera is on his laptop, just like looking at the people for guidance instead of like trying to appear like a human.
Yeah. I mean, it really, like, the actual one made it seem like he was reading off of a cue card.
Yeah.
Like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
yep.
Any other scenes or anything we want to talk about?
Nope.
Great.
I think we can do production facts.
Yeah. So this premiered September 8th, 2023 at the Toronto International Film Festival. The cast was unable to attend due to the SAG-AFTRA strikes at the time. It has an hour, 45-minute runtime, and it's rated R. It has an 84% tomato meter with an 85% popcorn meter.
Wow.
So people are pretty agreed.
Yeah, it's a solid B of a film.
Yeah, 66 out of 100 from Metacritic, and then a 6.9 out of 10 from IMDb.
Nice.
The Rotten Tomato critic consensus is Dumb Money's crowd-pleasing dramatization of real-life stock hijinks. May not tell the complete story, but it's rousingly entertaining nonetheless. And then a review from Reddit said that the inevitable issue with Dumb Money is that it seems like a hurried film that is frantic to benefit from a new piece of history. Could the GameStop stock story have dominated if not for coronavirus and a rush requirement for interruption? Dumb Money never puts forth the defense that the story could remain all alone. Which, like...
Yeah, I don't super disagree. I don't know if I super agree. I did feel like after watching this film, like, if you don't have some base knowledge of what really happened,
Yeah.
it probably doesn't do enough to explain it.
Yeah, you have to know that, like, YouTubers exist. Reddit is
Yep.
a place with fascinating corners, both good and bad.
Yeah.
And, like, it has a certain reputation with it to be like, because, like, Jenny, again, with her coworker, is like, I found this guy on Reddit, and he's like, are you sure that you should listen to him? And, yeah, just, like, the intricacies of, like, how a short squeeze work and everything is also kind of complicated to explain. And, yeah, I kind of agree that, like, it, like, the portrayals that it has are pretty fleshed out, but, like, the story as a whole of, like, the, you know, bigger picture, I guess, kind of was iffy. We, after watching it, we're kind of wondering, like, why doesn't this happen all the time? Like, if you can organize people like this, and why doesn't it happen more often? And I kind of agree with the Reddit interview that, like, or review that the pandemic and the fact that, like, people were stuck inside and, like, that allowed for limited distractions for people to, like, care about this and go all in, basically.
Yeah, and they said at the end of the movie that, like, hedge funds are now paying attention to this kind of thing more, so it doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
But, man, it'd be cool, not to get political, but it sure would be cool if we as a people could organize more.
Do it again. Yeah. This movie had a budget of $30 million. It earned $20.7 million at the box office. It was released alongside with A Haunting in Venice, and it made just over $200,000 in its opening weekend from 8 theaters, and then it got expanded from there. I think it was just going to be streaming, and then they did a limited theatrical release, and then it got expanded to a full theatrical release.
Okay.
Still didn't quite make back its budget,
Yeah.
clearly. It was in the top 10 on Netflix when it was released, with 3.5 million views. And I think that release came like late September, early October or something. Yeah. So there's some places that called it a box office bomb. That feels like a rude phrasing, but, numbers wise, kind of. And then who knows how much money they make from streaming.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the production timeline for this movie. So in January 2021, the GameStop short squeeze happens. Keith Gill had been paying attention to it since like July 2020. It all comes to a head 2021. MGM Studios is keeping tabs on the situation, and they already think there is a movie possible out of it. Also in January 2021, MGM buys the rights to a book proposed by Ben Mesrich about the short squeeze. So before the book even comes out, they buy it. May 2021, Lauren Schuker Bloom and Rebecca Angelo are announced to write the screenplay based off of Ben Mesrich's book, which came out in 2021, which is called The Antisocial Network. In April 2022, Craig Gillespie signs on to direct the movie. September 2022, it was announced that the film was retitled to Dumb Money and starring Paul Dano and to the other key cast members. I don't know what the original title was, if it was just Antisocial Network.
Probably.
Yeah. And then also in September of 2022, MGM drops out of the production, and then Black Bear Pictures acquires financing, and then they're seeking buyers at that year's TIFF. And then the movie would premiere at next year's TIFF.
It's really interesting to me that MGM was like
So gung-ho.
And
Yeah.
then was just like, eh.
Yeah.
Never mind.
I'm not sure what exactly happened there, but yeah. And then October through November 2022, principal photography takes place in New Jersey. October 2022, Sony Pictures buys the distribution rights for $20 million. And then September 8th, 2023, it premieres at TIFF, and then theatrical releases happen later in the month. So it was, as it was happening, then people were like, we're making a movie out of this, which is wild.
Yeah.
There were a couple interviews that I read with producers and stuff that were saying, like, this is the fastest that they've ever seen a deal get made. It was like, the one guy said it was, he got a call on Monday about it, and then by Friday they had a deal nailed down. So, wild.
Yeah.
It has been nominated for a couple of awards. It was nominated for Best Comedy Film from the 2023 Las Vegas Film Critics Society. It was nominated for Most Valuable Film of the Year from the 2024 Cinema for Peace Awards. And then America Ferrera was awarded the 2023 Groundbreaker Award from the Critics' Choice Awards Celebration of Cinema and Television. She shares that award for Dumb Money and Barbie in the same year. The tagline that's listed on IMDb for this movie is "Dear Wall Street, ...
Okay.
So they also have various alternate posters with the phrase that says the top 1% thinks you're dumb. And that's got like full pictures of the cast and everything. And then the Dear Wall Street phrase there is over a picture of a pile of money in the shape of the middle finger. So that I feel like that's the only way that tagline makes sense.
Yeah.
And then there's also lots of press with the phrase the ultimate David versus Goliath tale. It's not an official tagline. It was just like clearly a press phrase that they were told to put out.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, feels accurate enough. So Ben Mesrich, who wrote The Antisocial Network, also wrote 2009's The Accidental Billionaires about Mark Zuckerberg, which became the movie The Social Network. It was the basis for Aaron Sorkin's 2010 film. And then producer Michael DeLuna also worked on The Social Network and then he signed on to Dumb Money in the early stages of MGM acquiring the rights. He later dropped out when MGM dropped out. And then Cameron and Tyler Winklevoss, who are subjects in The Accidental Billionaires and The Social Network, are executive producers on Dumb Money. They're crypto guys, and they have I think it's like Winklevoss Pictures banner or something.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and then screenwriters Lauren Schuker-Bloom and Rebecca Angelo had some pretty unique difficulties with the script because events took place during the pandemic and most characters never met in real life. They wrote a thing for the LA Times saying they were inspired by The Social Network, of course, Moneyball, and The Big Short. There's a phrase in there that says it's a movie about internet populism a la Frank Capra if Mr. Smith went to Reddit. And then there's a quote where they said, "Our first breakthrough came when we cracked the film's opening after many false starts. We wanted to find a way to have our reluctant hero, Roaring Kitty, face off against our villain, Plotkin. These two have never been together in person, but their antagonism is the primary relationship driving our story. They have a parasocial relationship, no less intense than the social kind, but always mediated by a screen. Our instinct was to open the film with the high contrast between Gabe's comfortable pandemic life in side-by-side waterfront mansions in Miami with Roaring Kitty's working-class setup in frigid suburban Boston. Ideally, we wanted a face-off between the two men that called to mind the best of John Ford, two gunslingers preparing to duel. We came up with a sequence where the men's remote existences are oddly similar. Gabe, played by Seth Rogen, runs awkwardly between his mansions. Roaring Kitty, played by Paul Dano, runs at the high school track. We choreographed the sequence on the page to WAP, a pandemic banger by Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion, which we felt set the appropriate tone for the film, capturing the rollicking, high-energy, vulgar attitude of social media. The sequence culminates with Gabe becoming aware of Roaring Kitty for the first time. He watches one of Roaring Kitty's nerdy, homespun investment videos, freezing it at a key moment. Roaring Kitty, smiling, stares out from Gabe's computer screen. Gabe stares back at him. Who is this schmuck? With that, they were ready to walk their paces, turn, and shoot." I liked a lot of the comparisons that they did, or like the parallels that they did with Gabe and Keith. They also talk in this article about trying to go against the social media instinct to reduce your enemies to stereotypes and like two-dimensional caricatures. So they showed common moments between Gabe and Keith with things like they're both taking care of the kids and they both come home and like do the dishes and stuff. And then there's the sequence where multiple characters are, it's like Jenny and Kevin and the college students and stuff. They're reading this long anti-1% post that was on Reddit, but it's over footage of Gabe having dinner with his family as they're saying, like, these guys don't care about you, they're inhuman, blah, blah, blah. It shows him taking care of his kids and, like, putting them to bed and stuff. And it also shows the other guys, like, toasting in their mansions with other parties and stuff, but they tried to show that there is some common humanity.
Yeah.
And then they tried to unite people a lot, even though they're not in the same scenes together. They used like the rally cry that was online of like, if he's in, I'm in, talking about Keith. And then there's a couple things of characters singing the same songs to show the connections in the digital age. So like, there's one segment where everyone is singing Humble by Kendrick, and it goes through all the different characters doing that. So, yeah.
I think one thing is that Vincent D'Onofrio was maybe the character least needed in this movie. He had a pig.
Yeah.
He had a pet pig for some reason.
A pet pig.
Don't really know why.
It's just a really big pig that was in his kitchen.
Real big pig with real big balls. They don't really ever explain. All he really does is tell Seth Rogen,
get it together.
Check your social media.
Yeah.
I can help you.
Mm-hmm. He's
do
like
this.
He's the like kind of the most objective person with this, where he's unaffected by everything going on, and he's just able to be like, oh, this is really funny.
Yeah. And
then he's so monotone with his delivery and everything, where he's just like, Gabe, you should fix this. Yeah. Yeah, and then there an interview with The Hollywood Reporter with producer Aaron Ryder. He had some thoughts on like mid-level movies that felt related to like what we talk about with 2023 movies. So the question they asked him was, so prior to the double strike, what was the state of the mid-budget movie? And he said, I truly believe there is an underserved audience out there that is desperate for these movies. We all grew up loving movies like Heat and Beverly Hills Cop and Silence of the Lambs. There are these mid-level films that had movie stars in them and phenomenal directors at the helm. And at some point in the last 5 years or so, we just kind of stopped making them. Studios were making much bigger movies, and independents were making much smaller, very precious movies, with having a harder time to find success in theatrical spaces. And right now, this year in particular, it's shown us that there is an appetite for those commercially viable independent films, or at least films that uphold that balance of art and commerce. And I think we've done that with Dumb Money. There have been other films out there that are starting to prove that point as well. So my hope is that if the films are strong and they feel like they're commercial and that they're not going to feel like medicine or hard work, then people are going to come back to the movie theaters even more than they are now. I feel like that's a clearer way of when we try and define like what a 2023 movie is. He also, yeah, well, he talked about in this, like, he had a worry that because like once restrictions were lifted and everything, and then just like so many things got greenlit, and he was like, there's too much and people are just saying yes, and he's worried that it was going to be just like garbage just to get stuff out. And you know, this is a way to kind of be like, to I guess pick your battles a little bit with your resources. And I know there's that guy at the Oscars a couple years ago saying like, big studios, please stop making like 100
make $10 million.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I thought it was interesting. It's pretty related to what we talk about. That's pretty much all I've got. I don't know if there's anything else we want to mention before getting to our rating.
I don't think so.
Great.
We rate movies out of 4 with 5 options. 0 is, oh no.
Stock's going down.
1 is, it was a movie. 2 is well made or enjoyable. 3 is enjoyable and technically good. 4, Oscar worthy. I gave this a 3. I enjoyed it, and I thought it was made well.
I gave it a 2. I also enjoyed it. Thought it was made well. I don't really know how to put into words. Just like, it's more than a movie. I just don't think it's gonna stick with me as much. I also think like it's very of the moment in a good way and a bad way, where it does a really good job of being a time capsule of the pandemic, but also I feel like how relatable, or like almost like how legible is this gonna be in like 10 years from now to watch it again, and does it have the longevity? I don't know. So yeah 2.5 feels pretty good for this movie.
Other movies that we've watched recently. We watched The Accountant.
We did.
It was pretty good.
Yeah.
For what that genre of movie is. Pretty solid.
Yeah.
I was interested because all of the trailers for The Accountant 2. This weirdly makes me less interested in The Accountant 2.
It's just such a big vibe shift the way that they're marketing it.
Yeah, the trailers right now are really showing The Accountant 2 as like kind of like a comedy action.
Well, the new trailers, the first one that I remember we saw.
It's true, it was very emotional.
It's very, it shows him like doing his same stim of like tapping his fingers on the desk and stuff. And it's, I don't remember what song it was, but it's one of those like very slowed down, like intense things, and they're all coming back together. And but
now it just feels,
they're really playing up the brother angle of the two of them together, and I get that.
I also, what I like about The Accountant is that John Bernthal uses his real voice. I like John Bernthal. I think he's a great actor. I think he's a great actor that plays very similar characters. And there's nothing wrong with that. He has lowered his voice to sound more threatening, I feel like, in a lot of his roles.
Yeah.
Like, the voice that he sounds in Punisher is lower than his actual, just how he normally talks.
Yeah.
Like if you watch podcasts or him on just interview shows or whatever, he sounds much more normal in the way that almost like feels out of place because he uses his lower voice so often. Like Baby Driver, he uses his lower voice.
It's very gravelly and like,
And like there are even
seen things.
there are parts in the account where he slips into that, but where it makes sense.
Yeah.
When he's like angry or yelling or whatever. But then in other scenes, he's just like happier talking, being kind of silly.
Yeah.
And like, I don't think you really see that much with him anymore. Probably because he has made a career out of that voice and character.
Yeah.
And again, that's fine. I
him.
like his work.
Yeah.
I wish we saw that more. And from what I can tell with this new one, based off of trailers alone,
Yeah.
he's using his lower voice.
I saw part of it, their press that they were doing for that, because I was at the appointment to get my car looked at, and then in the waiting room they had the local news on, and they had a segment with like just playing their press for the movie, which is like, all right, I guess do what you got to do to fill up the airtime. But it was him and Ben Affleck like talking about the movie and everything, and he was using like his real voice because he's not doing a character and everything, and then he was just like, it's just so much more emotional range too that's available when you're at a higher register. And then he was talking about how excited he was to come back, just because like he loved working on the first one, and then they expanded his character so much, which makes sense because he's getting like, I don't know, at least double the screen time that he got in the first one.
Definitely seems like it's about both of them.
Yeah.
But honestly, it was still a fun movie.
Yeah.
And I thought it was the right amount of comedic moments.
The right amount of comedic moments for that character too.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know, it was like they showed the autistic representation like in a pretty okay way.
Yeah.
More than I thought they would. Of just like, I going into it, I expected them to be like, this is a savant and like, don't touch him. He doesn't like loud noises and stuff. And they're just like, I don't know, handled it in a more nuanced way.
It was neither autistic people can't do anything.
Yeah.
Nor was it autistic people are actually the next stage of evolution, and that's why the predator is hunting them. Right? Like,
there's a spectrum.
So, watch The Account if you want kind of a dumb but pretty good
entertaining
action movie.
Yeah.
That honestly takes a while to get to any real action.
Very true.
Yeah.
And also, surprise Anna Kendrick appearance.
Anna Kendrick. Love Anna Kendrick. Our next episode of this podcast will be about Heart of Stone, everyone's favorite 2023 Gal Gadot movie.
It is, yeah, it's a Netflix original Gal Gadot movie. If you want to give it a watch before you listen to our episode, buckle in for about 2 hours, I think.
Yeah, it's like 2 hours and 7 minutes or something dumb like that.
It's up to you.
Yep.
No spoilers for how we feel about the movie, but it's up to you.
Follow us on places. Leave questions and comments. We'll respond in our other podcast, Virtual House Sessions. But for now, we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Goodbye.